So, what if the story we all think we know about one of South Africa's most controversial presidencies isn't the whole story? Today, we're opening up an investigative file on the Jacob Zuma years, a time in history that's been defined by one very, very powerful story.
Yeah, you've definitely heard this phrase before 9 wasted years. It's pretty much become the official slogan for that entire era, right? You hear it from his own party, from the media, from analysts. It's the go to description for a period of, well, supposed corruption and national decline. But what if that's not really the full picture? In this explainer, we're going to pull on that thread. We're going to dig into sources that present a completely different narrative. We're just going to follow the evidence they lay out and see exactly where it takes us. So our first file, it cracks open the official story right at its foundation, the media. And it starts with a pretty explosive claim that there was a deliberate campaign to shape what you and I thought from the very beginning. I was part of a sinister agenda against Zuma. Whoa. Now, that's not some critic talking. That is a former newspaper editor, Stephen Motale, in a pretty stunning public apology. He basically claimed the whole campaign to paint Zuma as a villain wasn't about reporting facts, but about pushing a predetermined story that he himself helped build. And here's a crucial piece of evidence these sources point to. You know that phrase that defined Zuma for years, a generally corrupt relationship? Well, they claim it was never actually in the judge's final ruling against his financial advisor. Apparently, it was part of the prosecution's argument. It's a subtle difference, but it's a critical one that, they argue, the media just blurred into fact.
Okay, so the media narrative is one thing, but what about the official investigation into state capture, the big Zondo Commission? Well, our next file takes a hard look at a key piece of evidence from that inquiry, one that completely dominated the headlines. So the Zondo Commission drops this absolute bombshell, 9 billion rand missing from the state security agency. I mean, a number that big, it's no surprise it became the poster child for state capture under Zuma. But here's the twist. Later on, in court papers, the head of the commission himself, former Chief Justice Zondo, admitted the number was wrong. The actual figure, just over 9 million rand. That's 1,000 times smaller. It's a pretty jaw-dropping error. And look, this wasn't just a simple typo. Analysts like Professor Sipe, argued that this mistake exposed a huge flaw in how the commission worked. By publicizing these massive and totally incorrect figures, it basically created a court of public opinion. Reputations were destroyed by hearsay long before the truth ever had a chance to lace up its boots. Okay, so if the official story has some pretty big holes in it, what's the alternative? Our next file digs into the counter-evidence, social stats from the Zuma years that, honestly, they paint a very, very different picture. Now check this out. During the so-called wasted years, something pretty remarkable happened. The average life expectancy in South Africa jumped by 9 years. It went from about 52 to over 61. I mean, that is one of the most dramatic increases in the country's entire history. So what on earth was going on? Well, the answer, according to these sources, was a massive public health victory. After years of AIDS denialism under the previous government, the Zuma administration went all in on an aggressive rollout of antiretroviral drugs. The number of people getting treatment just skyrocketed from less than 10,000 to almost 2 million. They basically pulled the country back from the brink of one of its worst crises. And now we get to the explosive heart of this whole counter-narrative. It's the claim that while the entire country was being told to look at one hand, the real, much bigger trick was happening with the other, completely out of sight. So, let me introduce you to a company called Glencore. They're a global commodity trading giant. And importantly, they have a documented history of corruption, including pleading guilty in the US and the UK to a massive bribery scheme all across Africa. According to these sources, they are a very key player in the real story of state capture. Okay, so this is where the two stories just collide. On one side, you have the story we all know, Gupta capture, focused on a 2.15 billion rand coal mine deal. But on the other, there's this much deeper, older story of Glencore capture, which allegedly involved decades of multi-billion rand contracts. The argument being made here is that one story was a very convenient smokescreen for the other. That was a masterstroke. Those are the words of former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe, and he's describing a really stunning allegation. that when he blocked a huge price increase for Glencore's coal, they turned around and deliberately sold their mine to the Guptas. And the motive? To create a political weapon, a way to taint anyone who got in their way with that toxic Gupta label.
So the big question is, why? I mean, why would there be such a complex campaign to discredit an entire presidency? Well, our final file explores a motive that goes way beyond South Africa's borders.
The theory here is geopolitics. The argument is that this intensely negative media narrative was fueled by powerful international interests. Why? Because they felt threatened by Zuma's pivot away from traditional Western allies and towards the emerging BRICS bloc. That's Brazil, Russia, India, and China. It was a shift in allegiance that, these sources argue, had huge economic and political consequences for the old guard.
So after opening this whole investigative file, what are we left with? We've got a contested media narrative, massive errors in an official inquiry, some unacknowledged social progress, and a competing theory of state capture that's been almost completely ignored. It's a complicated picture, for sure. And it leaves us with one last, really provocative question. In the story of the Zuma years, who were the real architects and who were just the fall guys?